Welcome to Buckeye Turf Podcast. This presentation is on the process of desalination or reverse osmosis of water. My name is Carl Dannenberger, Professor of Turfgrass Science at The Ohio State University. Water is the world's most valuable natural resource. Without water, life as we know it would not exist. Although most of the earth is covered in water, 97.5% of the water is salt water, not usable for human or plant consumption. It is estimated that in 20 years that over 47% of the world's population will live in areas subject to serious water scarcity. Water for landscapes, including turf, in areas where demand is outgrowing availability, alternative sources like effluent water is being used, along with local or regional water restrictions being imposed. Water is not a commodity that is traded in the sense that as water becomes scarce and demand increases, the price rises, in the normal sense of what we think of supply and demand for, say, oil. In the United States, water is heavily subsidized by local, state, and federal government. In areas prone to drought, water restrictions can be implemented. In response, a few resorts and golf courses located along the coast have installed desalination plants to keep their landscapes and golf courses watered. Desalination is the process where salt is removed from the water. This crudely drawn diagram provides an overview. The process begins with salt water being pumped to the desalination plant, normally from the ocean. However, the following photographs that provide a step-by-step look at the process of desalination were taken from two golf courses in South Florida, where the water source is often, or in their cases, the Floridian aquifer. In this case, the water is pumped from the aquifer to the desalination facility, where the salt is separated from the water. The salt-free or demineralized water is then used for turf and landscape irrigation. The salt, which is highly concentrated, called brine, is returned to the ocean. So let's take a quick look at the process in a little more detail. The salt water is brought to the desalination treatment facility via a piping system, as shown here. This pipe is coming up out of the Floridian aquifer. In this case, the two centrifuge pumps located in the foreground pump the salt water in for the treatment. The actual removal of the salt from the water takes place in these 20-foot long tubes. The tubes contain membranes where the salt is separated from the water. It takes considerable pressure, thus energy, to force the water through these membranes. This process is known as reverse osmosis. As the water moves through the membranes, the purity of the water can be determined, for example, using electrical conductivity measurements. The entire system, from bringing the salt water into the facility till it is discharged, is monitored. For every 2 liters of salt water pumped, 1 liter of demineralized water is produced and 1 liter of brine water is produced. Brine is a concentrated water containing the salt. The salt concentration is considerably higher than what would be found in seawater in this highly concentrated brine water. In some of the golf course systems that I have observed, the amount of demineralized water can approach closer to 70% of the actual water that is processed. Once separated, the demineralized water can be used for irrigation, is stored either in above or below ground tanks, as this above ground tank is shown here, or it can be pumped into an irrigation pond. The brine water is returned to the ocean, or in some instances held in storage ponds on the golf or resort property. In summary, the advantages of a desalination facility are a supply of water that is low in salt. Normally the salt concentration is that of a normal drinking water, And desalination provides a steady supply of water that is not subject to local water restrictions. Disadvantages include the initial cost of the facility, which can run into the millions of dollars, and approximately $50,000 a year is needed for maintenance costs. It requires considerable energy input, and its use is limited to locations near an ocean or a sea. And finally, as related to golf courses and resort or other types of property, the perception of a community that may be under severe water restrictions and its reaction to seeing a property where a desalination facility is using as much water as they want can be rather controversial. How we meet the water needs of a global population and to a lesser degree landscapes will be an ongoing challenge well into the future.